Vince, are you ready for some rapid fire?
So ready for some rapid fire. There's some really good ones in here. I'm kind of pumped about this.
I'm happy I made you happy.
Yeah, I know you are.
So Andrew dropped this one in the chat last night. I didn't get to it, but I thought it was interesting. Fill in the blank. It's blank that we haven't seen more of Riley Leonard in Notre Dame's social media practice highlight videos during training camp.
It's fine. I don't have a problem not seeing Riley Leonard in social media. I saw the one social media highlight that I need to see, him running around the edge, outrunning guys, and getting a touchdown. That's all I needed to see from Riley Leonard. So I'm good.
I just go back to what I said at the start of training camp. Someone asked about the fact that we weren't getting more full practices and stuff like that. I think that between the fact that you've got the new offensive coordinator in Mike Denbrock and a quarterback in Riley Leonard, who didn't get to play in the blue gold game, obviously. We didn't get to see him do anything in the offense, so they kept things relatively vanilla, which you always expect from a new offensive coordinator in the spring. I think that all of those things aren't coincidences when you look at the kind of availabilities, things that we haven't been able to view, and the fact that you're not seeing more of Riley Leonard. I don't think it's going to come as a great shock to anyone once we see on the field what it looks like, how Mike Denbrock is employing Riley Leonard out there. But at the same time, I don't think that they necessarily. I think they want to keep that curtain up as long as possible going into the season. So I don't think it's a complete coincidence. And again, I'm fine with it, but I'm not completely shocked that we haven't seen any more of that out there.
Yeah, I'm not shocked either. I mean, I'm not surprised. And look, you're only going to have the element of surprise one time, and this is a big game in game one. I mean, he's not doing ridiculous stuff about not putting out a depth chart and things like that, like some other coaches have done in the past. So, I mean, he's not being an idiot about it, and I mean that in the nicest way possible. But at the same time, you also want to protect the assets that you have, and you want to protect a little bit of, any kind, like I said, any kind of element of surprise. So I don't really have an issue with it. I've seen him throw the football. I've seen him run the football. What more do we need to see? It's really, to be honest with you, it's none of our business.
Like Andrew says, and he's the one who threw it in there yesterday. He says he thinks it's weird because he's the most important player, and we haven't seen much footage of it. Again, I don't think it's in their benefit to put that much out there. And like Joe says, there was the video of him dropping the dime to Chris Mitchell, and it's like, okay, deep fade, deep corner fade,
right
toward the sideline. It's like, very common route, so it's not like you're giving away many trade secrets in seeing a corner route to Chris Mitchell from Riley Leonard, but and there was the stuff of him turning the corner and, in that video that they put out last week and stuff like that. We'll have plenty of chances.
That's the thing.
My watch is dead.
Oh,
what are we? We're 17 days away.
Look, as much as Notre Dame football is for the fans and all of those things, they have no responsibility to the fans to show them anything in the preseason. I mean, I know that sounds harsh, and I'm not trying to be an a-hole about it, but they really don't have any responsibility to show off what they're working on. You know what I mean? Like they don't. So I honestly do not have a problem with it. I don't.
DK's asking if Freeman has officially announced the starting quarterback.
He's not going to.
I feel
just
like,
FYI.
Feel like a little jab, like that's like there's any question there.
They're not going to.
When we have seen who's been out there with the first team. Fill in the blank. All the talk about the heat in College Station, Texas, is blank.
It's overblown. It's overblown. I'll just say that. Yes, it's going to be hot. Yes, it's going to be humid. Is Notre Dame aware that is going to happen? Yes, they are. Are they taking precautions like fluids and rest and, the way that they're practicing? Sure, of course they are. At the end of the day, that is not going to be the difference in who wins or loses this game. Period. It's not going to. I'm sorry. And if that's the excuse coming out of why you lost, then they're not the football team that we thought they were.
Carlos says, no, it's not. He's from Texas, and it's
Okay.
103 degrees there.
Congratulations.
Okay.
So is Texas A&M.
And here's the thing. I get acclimation and all that different kind of stuff, but this is just a new spin on one of these kind of topics that comes up every year. Last year, it was, how are they going to adjust to the time zone difference going to Ireland and coming back from Ireland? It worked out. Remember a few years back when they were bebopping all over the country? They went to New York City.
Right.
They came back. They played in San Diego against Navy. They came back. They played. There was a home game. They played a game in Chicago against Northwestern. And then they went back to Los Angeles, Southern California at the end of the season. And there was all this talk about how are they going to do it? All this travel. They're flying back and forth and all these time zones and all this different stuff. Guess what? It worked out.
Yep.
Like, it's going to be hot. Like there's nothing, there's absolutely nothing that we can say, that's going to convince everyone, that it's going to be okay, because you've got to see it and they've got to prove it to you first.
Sure.
It's going to be hot. There's no way around that. But, the game is going to kick off after 7:30 p.m. Central Time. Right. So I did look at the weather down there in College Station today. It'll probably by halftime drop at least 10 or 12 degrees. And then by the fourth quarter, it'll probably be a good 15 degrees cooler compared to the start of the game. That's all I can say.
I mean,
will it be a factor? Yes, but there are a lot of smart people who get paid a lot of money, both on the coaching staff and the performance staff over there at Notre Dame. I've got full confidence that they've got a plan and it'll work itself out. That's all I can say.
Right. And there's also a lot of guys on this roster that came from south of the Mason-Dixon line who are used to playing in the heat. That's part of it too.
But Vince, they haven't been practicing in the heat. So that changes everything because they're not practicing in the heat for a week beforehand.
Right. Yeah. And okay, I'm going to play devil's advocate. I am super worried about the heat. How would you like me to practice in that heat while living in Northern Indiana? Because this is still college football. That is the first week of practice. The first week of classes or the second week of classes, something along those lines. They can't just pick up the whole operation and go move to Texas for a week. It's not going to happen. So how would you like Notre Dame to practice to get acclimated to heat that does not exist in Northern Indiana? That would be my question. So you can complain. It's the whole you can complain all you want, but don't complain to me unless you have a solution. So what is your solution, people in general, like not you,
right?
Sean, what's your solution?
Are you just going to panic about it?
Right.
I know there are some people who think that they need to pack up and practice down there all week so they can get acclimated to it. Like that's going to solve everything. I agree with this. What Andrew says, because they're all Notre Dame is going to have these guys hydrated. They're going to have a plan that begins not just the day before the game. Start swilling some Gatorade Friday night, which it's like that's what your high school coach would tell you on Thursday night. It's like it's going to start early in the week.
Correct.
They're going to have them overhydrating as much as possible. Yep. They're probably going to be checking on all of them. Yeah, like all this different stuff. It comes down to depth, and Notre Dame has got good depth. And I think that they're going to ultimately have more depth than Texas A&M.
I agree completely. And Notre Dame will use its depth. There's no doubt about it. But they're not going to be stupid about it either. They're not just going to roll people out there to roll them out there. That's not smart football either. So, we've talked about the defensive line being able to go 11 or 12 deep. You'll probably see 9 or 10 of those guys, right? The linebackers, he talks about playing all 5. Okay, what does that snap count look like when Texas A&M is all over with? Is it going to be 3 with most and 2 with some? What is all of this going to look like? We're all going to find out, but you cannot simulate that heat up here. You can't. All you can do is prepare.
Literally, the only way to do it would be if they shut the doors of the Irish Athletic Center, the indoor practice facility, and, practice sweating their gonads off all week.
And even then, it's not going to be as humid, as it will be down there.
You can't replicate the humidity.
You just can't do it.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, you just can't. It's not Yeah. It's just not feasible. So
is it a factor?
Sure.
Yes. But I don't think it's going to be the factor that a lot of people, like I said, they went to Florida State 3 years ago. It's hot and muggy in Tallahassee too. Right. Like, it's not like Notre Dame has never started off a season playing in sweaty, hot conditions, So, like, this is just the thing that we have to think about.
You're right.
A couple weeks before the season starts. I don't know what else to say. So here's one that Tommy had last night that we didn't get to. Another one of our we in, we out. He says Notre Dame will actually handle the heat and humidity as it relates to cramps and heat exhaustion better than the Aggies due to having the deeper rotations. In or out on that?
I'm in on that. I think we just started talking about that, right? We kind of stepped on that question a little bit, but I think Notre Dame does have the depth, and I think that they will outlast Texas A&M in that department. In Elko's first year, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
So maybe that's not the case next year, but it is the case this year.
Yeah. Like A&M's, like their front end guys on the defensive line that we've talked about, they're good. They're really good.
Sure.
But I don't think that they're going to be able to go 11 or 12 deep like Notre Dame is going to.
And that's going to be the key. Those guys are really good. Their first line is really, really, really good.
Yeah.
Are they going to be able to be out there every single series, every single play? Like, that's unrealistic in the heat, right? And so does Notre Dame take advantage when those guys are off the field? That may be what this game comes down to, right? And so, yeah, I do think Notre Dame has more depth. I do.
Concur. So Howard Cross, Benjamin Morrison, Xavier Watts, they've all been named to the 2024 Chuck Bednarik Award watch list. The award goes to the nation's top defensive player. Which of the three has the best chance to win that award?
Well, it's probably, without knowing the history of the Bednarik Award, I would assume that it's difficult to go back to back, right? It kind of like the Heisman, like you're just not going to see a two-time winner.
Now, Watts won the Nagurski last year.
And the Nagurski, I'm sorry, you're right.
Yeah, this is the Bednarik.
Oh, there's so many damn awards.
I know.
All right.
I know.
My fault. I don't think Xavier Watts is going to have the stats to win that award this year. I think Howard Cross could potentially win that award if the stats back it up, which for a defensive lineman, obviously that is very, very difficult. But they're going to avoid Xavier Watts. They're going to avoid Ben Morrison. And so I'll say Howard Cross has the best chance to win.
See, I think it's going to be tougher for Cross just because, like, it's so hard for interior defensive. Like, it's an anomaly for Howard Cross to have the kind of season. He had like 60-plus tackles last year. You don't see nose guards with that kind of production.
Sure.
Typically. And again, if the defensive line rotation is as deep as it is, I see that being hard. Now, to your point, I also don't see Xavier Watts coming up with 7 interceptions again this year. But, like if he's even got 5 and he's a tackling machine, which I think that he can be. Like one thing about Watts is like he's got a knack for knowing where the ball is supposed to be. And that leads into the interceptions, the tackles, all these different things. So I'm going to lean it toward Watts just because I think it's going to be harder for Cross to replicate the pure numbers that he had as a tackler last year because of the position that he plays.
Fair enough.
I'm going to go toward Watts. This one from Lando Calrissian. Since analysts can coach on the field now, do you buy or sell Notre Dame should do whatever it takes to bring Harry Hiestand in on a limited role / part-time analyst role to coach up the younger players? Buy or sell?
Huge sell. You don't bring in an alpha to be a subordinate. It wouldn't work. It would not work. I'm sorry. It would not work. So that's a huge sell for me.
I'm in the same boat because like there are a lot of people who have this pie in the sky. Well, analysts can do this. Like bring this former head coach in as an analyst. Well, like it's not as simple as just saying, and obviously Hiestand is not a former head coach, but as you said, he's an alpha. He was just running this position group a couple of years ago.
Exactly. Yeah.
So like you're going to bring him in and have him work under Joe Rudolph now, just like bringing a former head coach in to work under someone as an analyst
at the same place that you were that position. Like,
yes,
no, that doesn't work.
I just don't see it. So I've got to sell because I think it's a pie in the sky, kind of idea that you're going to get this guy who used to be the guy and bring him in. It's like, well, he doesn't have to recruit now and all that different kind of stuff.
Here's the other thing. You either have faith in Joe Rudolph or you don't.
Yeah.
And what are you telling Joe Rudolph if you bring in Harry Hiestand to help him out?
I mean, this is a Jerry Jones move, to be quite honest.
Well,
this is a Jerry Jones kind of move. This is what
Jerry
Jones would do. Bring in someone, put him on the staff, and like he brought Dan Quinn in under Mike McCarthy. It obviously worked out for the defense, but he kept Dan Quinn around with the thinking that, well, if Mike McCarthy doesn't cut it, we've always got Dan Quinn and we can promote him. There were only so many times that you could do that. And, the defense stunk in the playoffs last year. And so Jerry decided that wasn't the move anymore. But that's the kind of move that Jerry would make. Do you really want to be making Jerry Jones type decisions? The answer is no.
Right. And DK says Alabama did it off and bringing in ex-NFL coaches to be analysts. I get it, but it has to be the right fit. You can't bring in the
and like guys were willing to work under Nick Saban because they knew what it would ultimately do for their career.
This is completely different scenario.
Let's not compare. Marcus Freeman is a good head coach, but he's not Nick Saban.
Nobody is.
That's the difference. Is
correct.
Nick Saban was the guy that they were working for at Alabama, and they knew what it could do for their career.
Correct. And it wasn't
in a quick amount of time.
And it wasn't being a subordinate to the position group that you were in charge of 2 years ago. Like, no, it's a completely different scenario, and it would be completely awkward, and it would not work. That would be oil and water. Would not work.
Right. Okay, Vince. So, actually, let's get to this super chat here.
Okay.
First, I forgot that Patrick dropped that in. I don't want to forget it. Thanks for the super chat, Patrick. He says, apologies if previously brought up, but how much of an impact does it have with Mike Elko tutoring Riley Leonard for 2 years? Thanks for the great show. Thank you again, Patrick. So what do you think? Impact on the Mike Elko impact?
Well, first of all, Mike Elko was not the quarterback's coach, nor was he the offensive coordinator. He wasn't tutoring Riley Leonard in anything unless he needed help maybe in a math class or something like that. Like he's a defensive guy. He's not an offensive guy. So that part means nothing to me as far as that part of the question. Now, what I will say to this is Riley Leonard went up against Mike Elko's defense in practice every single day. So who has the advantage here, Sean? The guy that saw Riley Leonard go up against his defense, or the guy who actually went up against his defense every day? I think you can make a case for either one, to be perfectly honest with you.
Right.
So I look, there's advantages on both sides. I don't think that, again, there's a lot of storylines that are attached to this game, and rightfully so, and it gives us a lot of fun things to talk about. This is also not something that this game is going to come down to. It's just not.
And it goes back to what we were talking about before with the fact that Notre Dame is not sharing a lot of video of Riley Leonard out there. Again, like there is a connection between Riley Leonard and the guy who's the head coach now down there. And he's a defensive coach, Mike Elko, like you said, so like, does he know Riley Leonard's tendencies? Sure. But there's a reason
Riley Leonard knows Mike Elko's tendencies too.
Right.
On the
and so does Mike Denbrock, because Mike, they've
exactly.
I guarantee you that one of the things that they're doing, is you've got the entire offseason. You talk about analytics departments and all that stuff. They have put together all these cut-ups. The question is ultimately going, like, you can have a plan, but the question is, do you have the personnel to pull off the plan?
Bingo.
And I still think that is advantage Notre Dame / Riley Leonard / Mike Denbrock.
Absolutely. So. And look, you can know Riley Leonard's tendencies, and that's all well and good, but he's got a lot of talent around him who he can get the ball to. And just because you know what a guy is going to do doesn't mean you can stop it. I don't put, yes, there's I would be naive.
I mean, you might know what Riley
nothing to do with it.
You might know Riley Leonard tendencies,
right?
But again, like, you don't know what pass routes these everyone's going to run on any
On a
given
particular
play. You
play.
still
Yeah,
like
right.
the guys on the field still have to cover
Right.
the guys on the other side of the field. There's just so much more that goes into it. Like do you know if he likes to throw right versus left? Okay, you probably know some of those things more. Does he like to run right versus left when he bails out of the pocket? Those kind of things.
Right.
Okay, you have some of those tendencies, but at the end of the day, you still have to go out and try to execute it. And
Correct.
I think that there's more advantage for Riley Leonard than there is Mike Elko in that instance.
Correct.
So longtime college football writer Ralph Russo from the Associated Press took a look at the last 10 years of preseason college football rankings to predict who will actually make it into this year's 12-team college football playoff. So here's what the last 10 years say. Like, this is a little bit of analytics that we're going to throw out here. So 4 of the 5 teams in the preseason top 5 will make it. Again, this is based on averages. 4 of the top 5 teams in the preseason top 5 will make it into the field. 2 teams ranked between 6 and 10 will make it into the field. 1 team ranked between 21 and 25 will make it, and 3 unranked teams will make it in.
So do we have to use this criteria, or are we just guessing on our own?
Well, yeah, we're using this criteria. So if we're saying 4 of the top 5, see, Vince is already just like he thought he had a plan.
God.
But did he execute the plan correctly?
Nope. I thought I knew your tendencies, and it didn't matter.
So yes, so we're saying if this is the case, if 4 of the top 5 teams are going to make it in, who are the 4 teams going to be?
Sure.
Who's the one that's left out? So here's the top 5: Georgia, Ohio State, Oregon, Texas, Alabama. Plain and simple. Which of those 5 teams gets left out?
This is tough. I've got all 5 of these teams in, so I don't know who I would leave out because, I mean, Georgia would be...
Am I Mike Elko in this situation, or am I Riley Leonard?
I'm not sure. Whatever it is, you win, obviously. I've got this beautiful bracket, like, ready to go.
This is probably as much work as you've done in advance. Okay. So Georgia plays Clemson, Alabama. These are like the toughest games: Clemson, Alabama, Auburn, Texas, Ole Miss, Tennessee. You said before that is a really tough schedule that Georgia has to play, but they're also still one of the most talented teams in the country. Ohio State has to play Oregon, Penn State, Michigan. Oregon has to play Ohio State, Michigan, Wisconsin. Interestingly, Oregon also plays Boise State in a non-conference game this year. Texas plays at Michigan. They also play Oklahoma, Georgia, Texas A&M. Alabama plays at Wisconsin, Georgia, Tennessee, Missouri, Oklahoma, Auburn. I'm just going to say it's either going to be Georgia or Alabama. I'm going to say Alabama's going to be my odd team out with the new coach and coaching staff.
Based on my rankings, Alabama will be the team that's out.
Okay.
So there you go.
All right. So we've so far got Georgia, Ohio State, Oregon, and Texas in. If we're just going, again, we're playing the numbers, what Ralph Russo has said here. 4 of the top 5 teams get in. So we're saying Alabama is the odd team out.
Right.
So 2 teams ranked 6 through 10 will make it. Here are the teams ranked 6 through 10. Ole Miss, Notre Dame, Penn State, Michigan, and Florida State. So 2 of those teams make it. The other 3 get left out.
I have 3 teams in, but I will say Notre Dame and Florida State would be my 2.
I've got Notre Dame in. Ole Miss goes to LSU. They have Oklahoma and they have Georgia. So my question is, do they win? Like, can they get in losing 2 of those games?
The problem is I have Ole Miss as the 4th best SEC team. So that's why I have them out. But the problem, the other problem is I have Alabama as the third best SEC team, so that's why I had them in.
I'm just going to go Ole Miss and Notre Dame. I think Ole Miss and Notre Dame. Wow, Florida State.
Who's going to win the ACC? Clemson?
We're going to get to them.
Okay.
Actually, I forgot to compare those schedules. Like I did all these other schedules. Look at Salty's question. Bring Salty's question up because I'm not exactly sure what he's trying to say. Is he trying to say that we shouldn't be using this criteria because the criteria doesn't matter? Like he's saying something about
this criteria is tough though because there are different rules in this playoff scenario that you have to follow. So it's tough to kind of follow these particular.
But I mean, that's what
That's
again, like he. Obviously, because of the fact that the 4, conference champions get the buys and all that stuff, obviously he took a look at
what they would have been if it was
at that as well.
Playoff.
Yeah. It's not just straight up rankings, obviously, but because for one, we're talking about preseason rankings. We're not talking about the rankings at the end of the season. The averages say over the last 10 years that these teams in these spots would have made the playoffs, if that makes sense.
It does. It does make sense.
And again, I know I threw I think I'm with you. I'm going to go Notre Dame and Florida State as well. And I think the fact that they play each other helps out the loser of that game.
Okay.
Basically. So I'll agree because Florida State has an easier schedule than what Ole Miss has, because Florida State basically has to play Clemson and Notre Dame, whereas Ole Miss, again, they've got to play LSU, they've got to play Oklahoma, and they've got to play Georgia. And if somehow they end up in the SEC championship game, then you got a duplicate there as well.
This next one is very difficult.
Yeah, so now you got to pick one team ranked between 21 and 25. That's ultimately going to get in, because again, this is what the averages say. Just like the averages in the preseason polls say 7 teams that start off in the polls are going to be out. The averages say that a team that starts out ranked between 21 and 25 is going to make the playoffs. So which team in the preseason AP poll ranked between 21 and 25 is going to make it? Arizona, Kansas, USC, NC State, and Iowa are your choices.
That's tough, man. That's tough. I've got, of these teams, right? I've got Kansas 3rd in the Big 12. I have Arizona 5th. I have USC 4th in the Big 10. NC State is nowhere to be found. And Iowa is nowhere to be found. So, using that criteria, I guess I've got to go with Kansas, but I'm not sure the Big 12 is going to get 3 teams in.
Right.
So, I'll say the Big 12.
Well, do we have any teams from the Big 12 in so far? I don't think we do.
We don't. So. No, we don't. Because there's none that are ranked high enough to answer our first part of the question.
Right. Because the middle part of the poll, Utah, LSU, Clemson, Tennessee, Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, Kansas State, Miami.
You got a bunch
Texas A&M.
You got a bunch of Big 12 contenders in there in the middle. So
right.
So that's why this is that's why this is tough, because you're guaranteed to at least get one Big 12 team in, and there's not a Big 12 team in the top 10 right now.
Right.
And you know what I mean? So I think I think this thing is overlooking the rules that the conference champion automatically gets in, and the odds of it being Utah, Oklahoma State.
This is just strictly looking at the rankings.
What I mean?
You're absolutely right. So you're not going to predict a perfect field. And what Salty's saying is, he says what he's saying is the data was built on a 14 playoff. No, it's not. He's trying to apply it to a 12-team playoff system that has no data yet. Again,
now he's going off the final rankings, and if there was a 12-team playoff,
he's saying if there would have been a 12-team playoff over the last 10 years, statistically speaking, based on the averages, these are the teams that would have made it in. that based, like what they start out. Here's what it shows they would have made it in if there had been a 12-team playoff. He's not using a 4-team playoff system. Yes, we also know that a group of 5 will make it in. Salty, because he also says that there are 3 unranked teams,
which would be the group of 5
that will make it in, and a group of 5 in this case. And typically every year, the best group of 5 team doesn't start off ranked in the top 25. So like if you look at the others receiving votes, you got Louisville, Virginia Tech, Boise State, SMU, Iowa State, Liberty, Washington, West Virginia, Memphis, Nebraska, Wisconsin, Texas, San Antonio, Tulane, Appalachian State, Kentucky, Auburn, and Colorado.
See, that's tough because none of those teams are getting in except for a group of 5 team.
Right. And like,
you know what I mean? Like it's
going to be the highest.
Happen.
Yeah. It's going to be the highest ranked group of 5 team.
Right.
And like looking at some of these group of 5s that are in those others receiving votes, like Boise State plays Oregon week 2. Boise State beats Oregon.
Then everybody's
most likely
going to
be
jacked up
in
because
the playoffs.
Oregon is probably in a lot of people's brackets right
now.
Right.
Tulane plays Oklahoma. Memphis plays Florida State. UTSA plays Texas, for example. And remember, all you got to do is be the highest ranked group of 5 team at the end of the season. You don't even have to actually win your conference. Although you're probably going to have to win your conference to be the highest ranked team. But like, so any of those teams there could lose to the Power 4 team that they're playing and ultimately end up in the playoff as well. John says Liberty. Going back to Liberty.
I had Memphis as my group of 5, but it was kind of just picking numbers out of the hat.
That's the direction I'm going.
Yeah.
That's the direction, especially because they do play Florida State. So even if they lose that game and it's relatively close, I think they'd have a good chance.
Yeah.
At making it in. So what you did all the work. Tell me the field that you predicted without this crazy criteria being thrown in there that screwed everything up.
Well, clearly I didn't read the instructions of the assignment. So
okay.
As a teacher, I failed the assignment, but it is what it is. So my top 4 seeds are Georgia 1, Ohio State 2, Florida State 3, Utah 4.
Okay.
So they get the bye.
So those are your conference champions then, basically.
Correct. So then I've got Oregon 5. I've got Notre Dame 6.
Okay.
Texas 7. Clemson 8. Alabama 9. Penn State 10. Oklahoma State 11. And Memphis 12.
Okay.
So
I like that.
Yeah. So some parity in there. And Notre Dame gets some nice matchups, in my opinion. But that was just happenstance with where I ranked them.
Yeah, so who would Notre Dame be playing?
So they play Oklahoma State in the first round at home.
Right.
That's I don't think that would even be close, if I'm being honest. Then you've got a rematch with Florida State, obviously at a neutral field. And then the way I have it set up, it would be another, not a rematch from this year, but a rematch from very recently, Notre Dame against Ohio State in the Final Four.
That'd be fun.
Some advantageous, in my opinion, advantageous matchups for Notre Dame. So, because look, at the end of the day, I'm not going to get in too deep on it, but end of the day, I don't see Notre Dame losing to Ohio State 3 times in a row. I just don't. Like, they're not afraid of Ohio State anymore.
Yeah.
Like, I just don't see how they lose that game. So, there you go.
I like that. That'd be awesome if you saw Notre Dame and Ohio State matched up in a national semifinal.
Be freaking great.
Yeah.
And then I've got Notre Dame losing to Georgia. So, there you go. Okay. I know. It all comes crashing down. Realistically, I'm sure we're going to do some predictions and things like that. I think Notre Dame can win 2 games in the playoff this year. And then
I do too.
And depending on matchups and things like that, we'll see how it goes. But in this particular scenario, I like the matchup with Ohio State. You know what I mean? And so I had them winning a 3rd game, but then losing the 4th game. And so it just really depends on who you get matched up with. So
I'm just thinking you got a quarterback like Riley Leonard, like a little, you got like a little Vince Young national stage.
If he's healthy all year long.
Yeah.
I like it. I'm saying it. I like it, but it's a long way to go between now and then. That's for sure.
Absolutely.
Archer says, "Oh, Vince, I sure do. I'm sure you do, and you should. You should absolutely. Why would you be afraid of Notre Dame? You're 2-0 against Notre Dame. You should not be afraid of Notre Dame. Notre Dame should have won the game. They didn't. Ohio State went and won the game last year. There's no two ways about it. I give them all the credit in the world for winning it when the chips were down and they had to go win it. They won it. And I just don't see Notre Dame allowing that to happen again. That's my point. So anyway,
I think the way it worked out, I think I like your picks better than, trying to weave around, because like you said,
right.
I think the one thing that obviously isn't accounted for are the automatic qualifiers.
Right.
Like in this whole formula that he tried to set up,
That's
because
tough.
rankings are one thing, but that still doesn't apply to you're trying to predict in August who's going to win conference championship games the first week of December, when you obviously don't even know who's going to be in those games. So, all right, that's going to do it for tonight. A lot of great questions between we in, we out, and the mailbag, and we do appreciate it. We will be back tomorrow, of course, with more Ivy Nation Sports Talk. Hit the like button before you leave, subscribe, rate, and review, and all that good stuff. And again, much appreciated, and we will talk to you tomorrow on Ivy Nation Sports Talk.